My name is Kai. I am a first-year PhD student at the University of Minnesota at Twin Cities campus. I have thought about making this video for a long time. There have been thoughts just going through, but I was never really in the proper time and space or mood for it. And now the second semester is about to start, so I think it is good that I kind of conclude the first half of the first year of my studies here by making this video. And also just to share something that I have learned by mistakes or by shock or surprise in the past, let's say 6 months, that I wish I had known sooner than later. The first thing I want to talk about.
It has been 2 very wild days. I am okay. I'm a little bit exhausted. I'm a little bit tired, but I'm gonna talk about the points with my phone, with notes from my phone. So, the first thing I'd like to talk about is the funding package. A funding package varies depending on the department, the college, and the individual. People of different department, different college, different nationalities, and working on different academic topics may receive funding packages with very different components. These components are usually the following. First is the amount of funding in the first year. It is generally quite important for a first year international student to get quite sufficient funding, not least because of the expense it takes to move to a new country, and I'll cover more on this in a later section. For some programs, you may get a lot more in the first year than in the rest. And some program demands teaching already in the first year, whereas other program won't ask you to do that until the second or the third. And when you're teaching, your funding is called the teaching assistantship or TA-ship. And when you don't need to do the teaching, your funding is called a fellowship. Although a funding package with less teaching obligations sounds better, there are other elements to consider. For instance, let's say Alice has 5 years of TA-ship, whereas Ben has 3 years of TA-ship, but Alice may also have a fifth-year dissertation writing fund, which Ben doesn't have, and that means Ben has to teach in his fifth year while he is working on his dissertation. So it could be a lot of mess and stress. The last thing that's important to mention is the summer funding. Some package may not include summer funding. This means that the promised amount of funding for that year will be distributed in the span of 9 months every other week, and leaving out the period from June to August. So if summer funding is not covered for you, that means you really need to save up earlier that year. And note that the lack of summer funding does not mean that you receive less than others. What matters is the total amount you receive in that year. I've been comparing my funding package with other people in different departments, and I'd say that it is true that some department gets more funding. Departments like history and comparative literature would normally get more funding than other departments in the humanities. And a STEM PhD naturally gets more funding than a humanities PhD. But all in all, there's some sort of balance to strike depending on one's funding package components. The next subject I'd like to discuss is the student fee. The student fees are basically how university robs you. So the student fees include tuition, fees for healthcare plan, fees for public transportation, for facility maintenance, for academic record processing, and other affairs. The fees you need to pay should subtract your department's funding, which usually covers tuition and the healthcare, and even more. These are the recurring fees that you need to pay every semester, although there are a couple of one-time fee for you to pay in the first semester. The recurring fee for your final pay ranges from $500 to $1,000. Again, depending on the college, department, and program, a $1,000 bill could be quite a lot for a first-year PhD student. So you may need to save some money for that before your program starts. Usually the university don't start transferring you the funding for your living expense until at least 1 week in the fall semester. So check when is the deadline to make your student fee payment. If you miss it, you are subject to a late fee. For my program, luckily, we were not asked to pay until week 6. Also, be careful to deregister for class on time. If you didn't get to deregister before the statutory deadline, a lump sum of tuition fee for those extra credits may still be charged, even if you deregistered or unenrolled later. The third thing is housing. Generally, you need to pay for the first month's installment and a deposit that is the same amount as 1 month's rent. But some landlord and especially student apartment housing agency may require a proof of financial guarantee. Basically, it should prove that you are financially capable of making continuous payment. That proof should show that you can earn a certain amount of money per month, which most non-Euro American students would not be able to meet. You could also show proof that your parents earn the stated amount and are able to provide for you. You will need to go through a third-party agency for this. I don't remember its name, but your housing agency could direct you to them. You will need to pay a service fee of around $150 to the third-party agency. You may also choose to pay 2 extra months of installment upfront as a proof. So I chose the third way, meaning I paid in total 4 months of rent before I even moved in. The rent ranges from $600 to $1,100 per month. Paying for 4 months means quite a sum. If you don't want to burden your parents, you need to start saving way ahead of moving to the United States. And know that you still need to pay each month throughout the year. These 4 months of prepaid rent will only be released when your lease terminates. Moving to the fourth, which is the social security number and the individual taxpayer identification number. So you need a social security number or an SSN to get a credit card. That said, you can only apply for an SSN 1 month before a job. So if your TA-ship won't start until, let's say, the second year, and you don't have any other part-time job, then you can't apply for the SSN in the first year. However, you could still apply for an individual taxpayer identification number or the ITIN as a substitute. Some banks allow you to get a credit card with ITIN, some don't. In any case, you will need either an SSN or an ITIN to get your tax return. It takes around 4 to 5 months to get an ITIN number. And now on to the tax. You will notice that the university pay you around 15 to 20% less than they should. That's because tax is being automatically subtracted. The amount you receive every other week is post-tax. As a PhD student, you are eligible for a tax return. A tax return application must be filed before April each year. I will talk more about the details of tax return in the future after I actually do that. As of now, I don't really know how much will be returned, but my general knowledge is that it depends on how much funding you receive and even your previous tax residency. So your previous tax residency is the country you live and work in before coming to the United States. It may be or not be the same of your nationality. It can be a little bit fucked up that because you were working in a foreign country before, you receive less tax benefit than your compatriots. One of these benefits is the allowed period of tax exemption due to educational purpose. For instance, Alice and Ben are from the same country. Alice worked in a foreign country prior to the United States, so she has a different previous tax residency registered than Ben. It doesn't matter that Alice cannot return to the foreign country after she graduated from PhD because she was merely on a work visa that's rendered invalid the moment she started her PhD studies in the United States. It is only the tax residency prior to coming to the United States that matters. Ben's previous previous tax residency allows him unlimited years of tax exemption until he completes his PhD studies. Alice's previous tax residency allows her only 5 years of tax exemption, meaning that if she can't complete her PhD in 5 years and she supports herself later through external funding, she cannot claim tax return for the funding she receives after the first 5 years. So that's it for now. Stay tuned for part two, where I'll talk more about aspects of living and settling in the United States, such as setting up your phone, working with tips, car culture, home interiors, and etc. Ciao.